My father asked me to co-sign another loan after his second bankruptcy. When I said no, he told the whole family I had been stealing from him for years. My aunt's voicemail hit my phone at 6:43 a.m. on a Saturday. Her voice shook with disgust as she called me a thief, a parasite, someone who had been draining her brother dry while pretending to be the good daughter. I played it 3 times, my coffee growing cold on the counter, trying to understand how 24 hours had transformed me from the responsible one into the family villain. By noon, my cousins had unfollowed me on every platform. By dinner, my grandmother had called to say she was removing me from her will. I sat in my kitchen surrounded by the wreckage of relationships I'd spent 32 years building, all because I'd finally told my father no. He'd filed for bankruptcy twice in 15 years. The first time, I was 23 and naive enough to believe his story about a business partner who'd betrayed him. I gave him $8,000 from my savings to help him get back on his feet. The second bankruptcy came 6 years later, after he'd maxed out credit cards I didn't know he had, and defaulted on a mortgage he'd somehow qualified for despite his history. That time, I'd already learned my lesson. I helped with groceries and utility bills, but I refused to co-sign anything or hand over lump sums. He accepted this arrangement for 4 years, playing the role of humbled father trying to rebuild. I should have known it was an act. The loan request came 3 weeks ago. He needed $40,000 to invest in a restaurant franchise with a college friend. The numbers didn't add up. The friend was someone I'd never met. The franchise he mentioned had terrible reviews online. When I asked for documentation, he got defensive. You don't trust your own father? I told him I trusted him, but I couldn't risk my credit score and financial future on a venture that seemed unstable. His face changed in a way I'd never seen before. Cold, calculated. He said I'd regret this decision. I thought he meant emotionally. I didn't realize he meant strategically. The lies started small. He told my mother I'd refuse to help him in his time of need. She called me disappointed but not hostile. I explained my reasoning and she seemed to understand, but his story evolved. By the end of the first week, he was telling extended family that I'd been secretly accessing his bank accounts for years. He claimed I'd stolen over $60,000 through a shared account we'd set up when I was in college to help him manage bills while he traveled for work. That account had been closed for 8 years. I still had the closure documents in a filing cabinet, but nobody asked me for proof. They just believed him because he was the patriarch, the man who'd raised 4 children and built a reputation as a generous, hardworking provider. The narrative was already set before I could defend myself. My brother called to demand I return what I'd stolen. I told him to ask Dad for bank statements proving any theft. He said Dad's records were destroyed in a basement flood last year. How convenient. My sister texted me a photo of her children with the caption, "They used to look up to you," and nothing else. My stepmother left a voicemail saying she'd always known I was rotten, and that my mother's death had clearly broken something in me that made me capable of hurting my own father. That one made me cry for 3 hours, but it also made me angry enough to stop playing defense. I spent the next week gathering every financial document I could find. Bank statements going back a decade. The closure confirmation for the shared account from 2016. Tax returns showing my income and spending were completely consistent with someone who wasn't stealing thousands of dollars. And most importantly, I found the emails. My father had a habit of putting things in writing when he was confident nobody would ever check. I'd saved his messages requesting money over the years in a folder I'd labeled Dad stuff without really thinking about why. Now I read through them with new eyes. Can you send $2,000 for the car repair? I'll pay you back next month. He never paid it back. I need $5,000 for the tax situation. You know I'm good for it. He wasn't. Please don't tell your brother about this loan. He'll just lecture me. 12 years of requests. $43,000 I'd given him willingly. Documented in his own words, with timestamps and my bank transfer confirmations to match. He hadn't stolen from me. I'd been keeping him afloat while he told everyone else he was self-sufficient. The family reunion was scheduled for the following month, hosted at my aunt's lake house. I wasn't invited, but I showed up anyway with a folder thick enough to qualify as a manuscript. My father saw me walk in and his face went pale. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked to the center of the living room where everyone had gathered and set the folder on the coffee table. Dad says I stole $60,000 from him. Here's 12 years of emails where he begged me for money. Here's the bank transfers proving I gave it to him. Here's the account closure from 2016 for the account he claims I was stealing from. And here's his second bankruptcy filing, which lists debts to creditors, not to a daughter he claims robbed him. The room went silent. My grandmother picked up the folder first. My aunt followed. My father tried to grab it from them and my uncle stepped between them, blocking him. Nobody said anything for what felt like an hour. My father hasn't spoken to me since the reunion, but 3 cousins have apologized. My grandmother reinstated me in her will, and my aunt sent a letter acknowledging she should have asked for my side before believing accusations. My brother still won't return my calls, but my sister reached out last week saying she's starting to piece together a pattern she'd ignored for years. Dad's restaurant franchise fell through when his partner discovered the bankruptcy history. He's now asking my brother to co-sign a different loan.